didn't go to movies. We didn't go to dances. We didn't play cards. What we read was also monitored. In high school, girls would read love stories. True confession. I remember a girl loaned me one, and I brought it home and I had it in my notebook. And when we were sitting around that table, supposedly studying, I had the love story book in my notebook. And so I was reading it. And so my father and my mother was sitting at the sewing machine. So my father called my mother Julie. Her name is Julia. He called her Julie, and she called him NC. So my father said, Julie, do you see what Dorothy is reading? And I was just afraid. And so Mama said, no, I think she's studying her lesson. She's not studying her lesson, she's reading that trashy magazine. And so they both came and looked, and I was reading the magazine. I tried to flip the pages over, and cover it with the sheets, but I couldn't do that. So they were about to take it in, and we had a fireplace. And I said, oh, please, Lord, I have to carry her book back tomorrow. Don't do that. She'll beat me up if I don't carry it. So they said, well, you take that back to her, and don't you bring it back here again. My sister Sara was going to have a party. I don't know whether you called it a party, but I was sent down to the store to get some cards, and they were supposed to be old-maid cards. And I came back with the cards, with the regular plain cards. And I remember my mother looked at them and said, oh, you brought these devil cards here. And I remember her putting them in the stove and burning them up. We didn't have prayer every night, but I recall when my parents prayed before we went to bed, I just had the feeling that I was just so protected. It was just such a, it was just such a good feeling. And I just felt that nothing wrong, nothing was going to harm me. I just had the feeling of well-being.
It's extremely sad in this respect. We had a wonderful Jewish community. We had at least 25, 30 families, but not any of the children remained in Georgetown because there wasn't anything for them to do here. But all of the children have been very successful. We had a lovely choir. As I say, I played for weddings, bar mitzvahs, confirmations. And now, and all have passed away. We are only 6 remaining. But we still hold our services every Friday night, and Alvin Goldstein conducts the services. We still observe the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. We have our Passover dinner at the Pink Magnolia here. Billy Johnston caters it for us. And we have our breakfast after the Day of Atonement, also the Pink Magnolia, Billy Johnston. So, and it's really ironic, but we only have such a few on Friday night. But for Passover dinner, we had 46, and for the day for the breakfast, we had 30. Now you go figure it. And so many of them live at Paulus Island. It's really beyond our comprehension, but what can you do? You know, we do the best we can.
My parents were very religious, and we grew up in a religious household, but it didn't mean that I believed, right? And so I'd ask my mother, what God are you talking about? Are you talking about the one who's on vacation? You know, I don't know how I put those words together, but it was so disgusting. And then you go to church and they have these 10 commandments. Everybody's preaching the 10 commandments after you, and come out of church and nobody's living by commandments and all that stuff. So I just didn't believe. And then in the black community, especially in the countryside and on those plantations, people became a Christian by a process that was absolutely different than anything you ever saw afterwards. By the time you're 12 years old and you want to become a Christian, you couldn't just march up to the altar and say, I want to become a Christian. You had to go out in the nighttime and pray with the blanket and a pillar, and out there, mostly people were in their front yard or whatever. You didn't have to go in woods or anything, and pray that you become a Christian. And then you'd come in to the house and you sleep. During that time, it could go on for months. During that time, it was all secrecy. You only had to talk to the elders in the church. You dream, you come in the house and you sleep, and whatever you dream, you would tell the elders in the church the next morning. And then they interpret the dreams for you to see where you are in your becoming a Christian, right? So somehow or another, there come a time in all of this procedure where they say, you've proven yourself, whatever, now you can go to the church and ask to be a member, whatever, right? So, and in that process, some dream they interpret like you get a spiritual leader. It comes out of some of those dreams. I don't even know how else to explain this because it's so weird. Then you're responsible like everybody else. And I was like 12, 13 years old. And the preacher would get up there, Minnie, would you lead us in prayer? Oh, God. And I'm shy and all, but you had to be a responsible Christian like everybody else. Then the preacher could ask you, would you lead us in the song, or something? And you had to. And then that was the Methodist church. And people would clap and shout and really spiritual. But you become a part of it. I still question how we who say we are Christian, how we live 24 hours a day, but some of it not being Christian-like. So the people in my church, they always say, Minnie, people make mistakes. I just don't allow it, and I'm not perfect. So people have to criticize me because I'm going to still criticize other people. If you're doing wrong things, that's useless.
Went to All Saints Church. And at that time, when I was a small child, the Reverend Henry Delzell Bull was our rector. Now this would be the 1930s, 40s, early 50s. He was mainly the rector of Prince George, Georgetown, All Saints Church, and then Prince Frederick's on the PD. And then he attended to this mission called Snow Mill out up the back part of Georgetown County, there somewhere. How he ever managed all those churches, I'll never know. But in his time, we had church in the afternoon, and we went, and we would have Sunday school, and then later years, after his time was over, we had a rector of our own again, and All Saints Church was established in 1767. We had our own rector until 1924, and everything was in such economic chaos, you might say, after the end of the rice planting. Nobody had any money, and it didn't have any money to support a rector. That we teamed up with Prince George. Well, gosh, when was it? 1968, something like that. Prince George decided that they wanted a rector of their own again, and so All Saints had to pull itself together and get a rector of its own, and we did. My mother grew up a Presbyterian, always thought like a Presbyterian. She, of course, joined the Episcopal Church, but she really described herself as a veneered Episcopalian. still Presbyterian. That under it all, and her third, and her father was Scots Presbyterian, her mother Scots Presbyterian, and they all, had that Presbyterian way of thinking. I could certainly do with more spirituality, I can tell you that. I'm working on it.
I had the great good fortune to be reared in a Christian home. My mother, one of the things that I remember about her was that every night before we went to bed, she read us a Bible story. And then afterwards, we would discuss it. Then we would kneel, my sisters and I, at my mother's knee and say the Lord's Prayer. And at the end of the prayer, we would go through the blessings for the whole family. Bless Mama, bless Papa, bless, 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 bless. After my mother's death, of course, that stopped. There was no one to do that. But I attended a Baptist school, and that undergirded the religious education. But while I was in school at Morris College, I had a teacher who was a Christian Scientist, and I used to have chronic indigestion. And the teachers lived in the same residence halls with the students, the female teachers, with the female students. So I remember I lived on the same floor as this teacher. And whenever I was sick, she would know it, and she would come in, to see how I was feeling, what she could do. So she told me, she said, "Florida, you don't have to suffer like that." She said, "I'm going to let you read my book and tell you what happened to me." She said, "I used to have chronic indigestion like that." She said, "My mother sent me to college in Des Moines, Iowa, to Drake. And at that time, Negro students were not living in the residence hall, and I lived in the community. And this woman with whom I lived, I did not know was a Christian Scientist. And one night I had a very bad attack of indigestion, went downstairs and asked her if she would please call the doctor. She looked at me and said, no. The doctor hadn't been in her house in 25 years. She said, and I looked at her, and I could not wait to get back upstairs to write my mother and tell her she didn't know where she had sent me. She said, but I went to sleep when I got back upstairs. And the next morning, I was just fine. And when I came downstairs for breakfast, she was smiling. She said, I know you were disturbed when I replied the way I did. She said, but I'm a Christian Scientist. And she began telling her about Christian Science and the position of spiritual healing. And she said, now if you'd like, you may go with me to church at some time. And she started going to church with her. And she was impressed by the testimonies of healing that she heard. And in time, she became a Christian Scientist. She said, now, we are here at a Baptist school, so you cannot let anyone know that you are reading my book. So I read her copy of Science and Health periodically. She did not try to convert me. She did not say anything more. And I read the book, and over a period of time, I was completely healed. And I laugh and say, now I could wake up in the middle of the night and eat boiled octopus, and nothing would hurt me. And when I went to Washington and lived with my aunt for a time, I started attending the Christian Science Church. And it was while I was at NYU that I joined the Christian Science Church. And ever since then, I've considered myself a student of Christian Science. I belong to the Christian Science Church here at Pawleys Island, Litchfield. And I'm glad, because the emphasis for me has been on developing spirituality. And it calls for constant study and constant application. And the constant study suits me because I think that's the thing that I'm particularly interested in. But Christian Science has given direction and meaning to my life.
I came to the knowledge of Christ in 1973. I just came to the knowledge of him, and I decided to take him as my personal savior. And I got involved with a whole lot of stuff in the church. I worked as a missionary president for 7 years as a junior president. And then they promoted me on up to senior president, and I worked that for 8 years. And within those 17 years as missionary president, we did a lot for the communities, and we didn't just do for our members. If we know of children that needed food, clothing, material for school, we bought it. If we know of a family that couldn't pay their light bill, we paid their light bill. We had a pastor that was very community orientated. He didn't mind you know, just cleared it with him. And many times we've bought clothing. Many of times I've contacted schools and asked for the child like not going to be getting a lot, and they gave us names, and then we would buy the materials like book, pencils, clothing, whatever the need was. We fixed food baskets for the parents of the children. We just did a whole lot through the Missionary Society for the children. And as that worked on for 8 years, we did some of everything. I was elected for the Georgetown County Coordinator for the Health Ministries of the AME Churches. And that's going to be a new challenge. And I feel that I'm going to do a great job, because it's kind of like in the same circle with the people that I'm working with right now. So I feel really excited about that. And I know it all boils down to Jesus Christ himself. He said a long time ago, years ago to me, reach down those that others have forgotten. Those are the people that you focus on and help.
I just have such wonderful, wonderful memories of growing up in the church. And the church was the Methodist Church, Duncan Methodist Church, and my grandfather helped build the church. And he and my grandmother came to Georgetown in 1900, about 1900. So my mother was born in Georgetown. And they immediately that's when they were, so he was on the board of stewards and taught Sunday school. So, there was never any question in my mind about going to church, and very, very, very versed in the whole thing. It was just a real big part of my growing up. It's provided just a real bedrock in my life that it has reinforced me all my life. I remember that we were in the church. We were in Bible school when we had D-Day, and we all went into the church, what's the word I want, the sanctuary, and said prayers. And then when my husband and I married, he's an Episcopalian, and so we decided, we thought first we'd go to the Presbyterian church, maybe just to thing. And then we said, well, there's no sense in that. So we went to both for a while, and then he felt very strongly that he would like to stay with the Episcopal Church. So I felt the main thing was to go to the same church. So that's been a wonderful experience as well. I've tried to raise our children the same way, and I think that we've succeeded. I'm very pleased to see that Laura's teaching Sunday school, and all of them go to Sunday school, and they go to church, and so it's been extremely important in my life.
I work with my church very religiously, the Covenant Baptist Church, where I serve as clerk. I'm superintendent of Sunday school. When we were growing up, family was very important. Well, of course, it still is to us. We visited our friends. We went to church. Of course, church was a very, very big part of our social life. My dad, one of these strict Baptists, did not believe in dancing. He did not believe in going to nightclubs and those kinds of things. You run into the devil in those places, so we didn't do that. In fact, I think I left home not knowing how to dance because of Daddy. And John, what was John the Baptist? You know?
Oh, church organizations. I belong to the Catholic Women Club, St. Mary's Altar Society, and you know, we didn't have too many organizations back then at the time, and of course with all my work and so forth.
The church part of it was always a strong part of our childhood, and after all, if you've grown up that way, that's what Christmas is. But there again, that gets lost in the shuffle. We would, as I said, have the Christmas tree at the church, and I think it was very thrilling to offer. They always had a little scene of the Madonna and Joseph and the baby Jesus, and since I was a little girl with long hair, dark at that, and Mary they thought probably had dark hair, so I was often chosen to be Mary, which was a thrill, you know, for a little girl. But we would always have some sort of little Christmas play or program, sing Christmas carols, and they'd give out these little paper bags with an orange and apple, some raisins and nuts, and a little candy. And we had one year, we had the same man was Santa Claus lots of times, but one year he really was, he didn't drink regularly, but he did sometimes, and that was the jolliest Christmas I ever remember in Blaine United Methodist Church. He had a wonderful costume, Santa Claus costume, but boy, he was happy.
Adorable. That's what I'm known as, Adorable Rit. I try to love everybody, do the right things, and I walk humbly with my God.
Judgmental, sentimental. You probably already see that I can cry and drop a half. But I think I'm a kind person, considerate, and attribute human qualities to everybody.
Well, I'm short, plump, whatever.
Although there have been things in the past which were upsetting, I have faith to believe that things are going to get better. You know, I've heard some people say that thinking about the struggle that we are in now, and we say we are all in this together, but after things cool down, we're going to get, you know, right back where we were before. But I have always been one to have faith and believe that mankind really wants to be good.
Opinionated, insufferable, intolerant, I guess, of somebody who doesn't think the same way. How could they be in the dark? So I get moderate. I would like to think that I'm moderate, really, rather than I'm really sort of a middle-of-the-road kind of person. I'm not an extremist in any direction. I don't think I am. Somebody else may think so.
I feel like I'm a very loving person. And I feel that a lot of times I get the wrong impression of people because people can tell me most anything when it comes to I don't have this and I don't have that and I like this and I like that. And my heart just go out to them and I'm busy trying to do something to help, you know. And sometimes I think, one of my girlfriends says, You can just edit this one out. One of my girlfriends says, "You're just a sucker for people."
Independent.
You always been like that?
Always been like that.
Any other way?
I didn't want to have anybody to do anything for me. I always tried to do it myself. Then I couldn't blame anybody.
I have wanted only to teach history. And the energy and time that one puts in administration would steal away the time that I would need for study and for reading and for organization. That is why I got out of being the Dean of Women as soon as I possibly could, the Director of Student Life as soon as I possibly could.
Mama marched with the suffragettes when she was an art student in New York. She was always a little ahead of, and you can't grow up with a woman like that, you know, without having it all kind of rub off a little bit.
I'm an involved person, and I'm a caring person, and sometimes I think I can change the world, but then again I know I just have to do my little bit wherever I am.